Hello everyone, welcome to the video, and today we're going to be talking about the top 5 drop spots in Kings Canyon on Season 4 Split 2 of Ranked. So before we get into the video, I just want to say that this is actually my Smurf account. I'm not actually a Bronze, I'm a main account, I'm an Apex Predator. This is just my account for my Bronze Predator series. I think I'm going to be starting that up again, so you guys just stay tuned for that. It won't be Bronze Predator, but instead Bronze to Masters. But either way, let's get right into the video. So there's a couple components that actually go into making a drop spot good or bad, and I basically break these down into 3 different components. So the first one is the amount of loot you get, or the tier of loot, whether it be high tier loot, low tier loot, or medium tier loot. The second category is how dangerous the actual drop is. So obviously Skull Town is a very dangerous drop and not really worth it. But then there's unnamed locations that are almost completely free and you almost never get contested. And then the third component is rotation ability, and this basically means just, you know, what areas nearby you can rotate to, or potentially if there is a lot of dangerous areas nearby, if people are going to rotate on you immediately, and how dangerous it could be, and the loot potential and everything about that. So, coming in at number 5 on this list, we have the Pit. The Pit is a pretty slept on location, and I really love the Pit. I feel like for the most part you come out of the Pit with really good armor most of the time. You do get purple armor about half the time landing in the middle, and for the most part your team can usually secure at least one other blue. So for the most part you pretty much leave Pit with at least blue for at least the whole team, or like 1 purple, 1 blue, and 1 gray. It's very rare that your team actually leaves there with all gray armor, but you can also rotate outside, and there's a little building, and on that building you actually, there used to be a little rumor that there was almost a guaranteed gold item in there. I think that's gone. I think that's patched out of the game, but that was a thing. But this little house, there's a couple bins outside of it, and you can get a couple more things there, as well as the bins. So it's pretty carefree in terms of the loot. There's decent loot. I'd say about 5-6 out of 10 loot. You usually get pretty good armor, but the weapons and attachments are usually lacking severely. And that's where the rotation ability comes out. I think that the rotation ability for Pit is actually very good. I'd say that it's about 8 or a 10, because you could either go to runoff. Usually teams land runoff, so if you rotate to runoff, you're going to be looking towards fighting, because I doubt that you'd be able to get runoff for free. But slums is not always hit, so if you rotate slums, you can usually loot the entire thing and get better weapons, get better attachments, and that's why I think that the rotation potential is very good on Pit. Another thing to note is that the actual Pit itself is not very dangerous. So I'd say in terms of it being pretty free, I'd say it's about a 9 out of 10. Very safe drop, and for the most part, if you do get contested, you just need to worry about one thing, and that is getting a gun. Don't be one of the guys that makes the crucial mistake of landing on armor, because you will get mowed down the second you pick it up, because people next to you will always pick up a weapon. I see people make this mistake all the time, and I always fry them for it and just take the armor off of them. So just, if you are getting contested or 50-50 at Pit, just go ahead and pick up a weapon first and then fry everyone in the area, and you will usually win the fight. So I think that those components all go into making Pit a solid drop spot. There are a couple different locations that you can maybe argue for, but I think Pit is a very slept on location, and I think that's why I had to include it on this list. So coming in at number 4, we have Gauntlet. So Gauntlet is very good for loot. This is another pretty much guaranteed purple location. I think about 50% of the time I land there, there's usually a purple armor in the middle, and that is amazing. Not to mention the weapon potential is very good. I left there with a lot of attachments. So, and by the way, I will be putting gameplay in the background of exactly what, when I landed there, exactly what I received, just to show you guys a little bit more about the actual reward side if you are not familiar with landing in this spot. But in the middle of Gauntlet, there's usually a purple item. Actually, I think there's always a purple item in the middle of it, and sometimes gold. I've seen actually a gold prowler there before. I've gotten a gold prowler. And I don't even think it was hot drop, so just be aware that there's always going to be, like, you know, a purple item, whether it be purple armor or a backpack in the middle. So, you know, land in one of those little buildings next to the ramps to the middle. That way you can get a weapon and then just spring over and take whatever's in the middle. Like I said, it's usually armor, and usually when you're leaving Gauntlet, your entire team will have, the purple that was in the middle, and then, blues. So you guys usually leave pretty kitted from Gauntlet. Now, I think there's a couple giant drawbacks of it, and that is rotation potential, and also, just how dangerous it actually is. So pretty much every time I've ever gone Gauntlet, I've been contested. It's a very, very popular spot. Tons of people like going there. And if there's not one team going there, there's two. You rarely have that place free. And that's why I'm going to say in terms of how safe of a drop it is, it's probably like a 3 out of 10. There's a very good chance that you actually get destroyed right off drop. And the rotation potential, whereas it is good, there's areas next to you like Skulltown, ThunderDome, and Airbase. And I think that whereas those are all great locations, those are also locations that people are always going to drop. So after you fight at Gauntlet, you tend to just get third-partied, and that's the major drawback of this location. So in terms of rotation potential, whereas it is there in terms of, you actually getting loot, and you could get lucky, and ThunderDome might not be looted, but for the most part, people are going to land ThunderDome and just third-party you, so your rotation potential goes down a lot from that. I think it suffers. Just because it's a very unsafe drop. You could even go with 2 out of 10 just because if you don't get killed by the initial team that lands on you, chances are you're going to be killed by the third-party team rotating in. And especially if they're coming from ThunderDome, which happens a lot, they usually have some pretty good stuff, and you usually just get rolled over and they take all of it. So that's why I'm saying rotation potential for it is like a 3 or a 2 out of 10, as well as safety being 3 or 2 out of 10. The only thing that really redeems this spot is the incredible loot you can get. I think when I landed there, I got like an R9 the first time, purple armor, and a Peacekeeper, which is insane. Usually your team will be pretty kitted. I think the one time I went there, it was like 2 purples and a blue when we were leaving. I landed there a lot of times, and it's really such a great location to land at. But like I said, very dangerous. So coming in at number 3 on this list, we have Wetlands. So Wetlands is like the most balanced pick on this list, and I say that because it comes in on like high tier of the average, 6, 7s out of 10s on all 3 of the categories. So what I mean by this is the loot is actually pretty solid on it. So I would say it's about 6 or 7 out of 10 for the loot. Rotation potential is probably the best part about it. I'd say it's about 8 out of 10 for rotation potential because there's a little town. There's a couple buildings on the back side of Wetlands, and that kind of counts as Wetlands, so you can rotate over to there and get another free rotation. And a lot of people don't actually land Relay and Swamps, so a lot of times if you rotate to Swamps, you can get the back side before the team that landed there even is able to loot it, or usually there is no team there at all, so you just get Swamps for free. Same thing with Relay. There's a lot to Relay, so you can usually loot the bottom buildings and then third party and contest the team. You'll usually have better gear and better equipment than them, so that's what I think makes this a really great rotation potential. So that's why I think that this has great rotation potential, just because the 2 neighboring locations are not going to be able to loot their area as fast as you can, so you will be the one that will be engaging the fight onto them, and you won't actually be getting attacked. In terms of safety, Wetlands, I'd say about 50% of the time does get contested, so it's not the safest, but for the most part, it's not like an area where every single time you land there, you're going to have a team. A lot of times you land there, people are just going to flake off if they see no one. It landed Relay or Swamps, so they won't really try to contest it because people that are landing Wetlands are typically looking to not fight. So if there's a team going there with you, chances are they're going to break off and go to one of the neighbor locations, and then you will be able to fight them later on. So that's why I think that this is probably the safest and most efficient location, just because it has great loot, great rotation ability, and is a pretty safe drop overall. So coming in at number 2, we have ThunderDome. So ThunderDome is probably one of my favorite locations in the game, just because of the high tier loot potential and the almost guaranteed purple armor in the middle. I think they actually nerfed it a little bit, because I know in Series 1 of Ranked Season 2, there was pretty much guaranteed a purple armor in the middle, or at least blue, and that's not always the case now. Whereas about 50% of the time you do actually get the purple armor. Sometimes it is blue, and sometimes there's no armor there at all. So I'd say in terms of loot, ThunderDome is probably like an 8 or 9 out of 10. It's actually amazing for loot. And in terms of rotation potential, I'd say ThunderDome is also a 9 out of 10. I'd say this is definitely has amazing rotation potential because, as I was talking about before with Gauntlet, you can easily just slide over to Gauntlet if you hear a third party, destroy them, and take everything from Gauntlet. And Gauntlet has amazing loot, so if you can win all of the loot from the two teams fighting, get some early kills, you will be set for the entire game. And that's why I think that this location is so great. The only problem with it, I'd say, is safety. I say safety just because there's Skull Town, which is literally right next to it. A lot of times people will rotate on you from Skull Town if they get bullied out of it. You usually are able to kill them, but you know, sometimes I'd say about 70% of the time you're being landed on if you go ThunderDome. You rarely get ThunderDome free, so you do have to fight for it. But if you do clean up real quick, it usually does turn out pretty well, and you can either rotate towards Gauntlet if you heard fighting and if you want the third party, or you can take the safe route, and this is why it's also great for rotation possibility, is because there's a little town right next to it that nobody ever lands, and you can just rotate over there and loot the entire town. It's actually pretty big, and it has decent loot there as well, so whatever you didn't get from ThunderDome, you will be able to get from there. So that's why I think ThunderDome is definitely one of the best locations in the game, and overall, you know, one of my favorite drop spots. So before we do number one, I do want to talk about a little honorable mention, and that is water treatment. I believe water treatment is an excellent location to drop at, whereas you do get contested a decent amount of the time. There's not like guaranteed purple armor or anything, but there is decent loot, and there's a couple easy rotations such as the little towns outside of it, so that definitely comes in as the honorable mention spot and could arguably contest pit for number 5, since it is a solid location and not all the time are people landing on it. But coming in at the number 1 spot, and in my opinion the absolute best drop spot for Kings Canyon on Season 4 Split 2 of Ranked, that is Repulsor. So I absolutely love a Repulsor. I think that it is such a great location. It's not exactly such a safe drop. I'd say this just because I feel like 90% of the time you're being contested, and that's not really it's not a great number, but if you land the right way, you'll be able to kill them most of the time. If you just let them rotate to you, or if you push up to them, there's a certain way you have to do it depending on where you land. If you land buildings, it's better to just push up on them and catch them while they're still looting, because they'll be in those little bunker areas, and you can usually catch them separated if you push as a team. So you just have to be careful when you are working around this. But the reason why Repulsor, in my opinion, is the best location for dropping, it has nothing to do with how safe it is, because it honestly is not a very safe location to drop. It's the guaranteed loot you're going to get and the guaranteed rotation that you are also going to get. So there's usually a team that lands water treatment, and that's fine. You don't actually rotate that way. You usually rotate towards the gas station on the left side of it after you kill the team, or you rotate towards Watchtower. So Watchtower is also a high tier loot location, so you can actually get 2 high tier loot locations in Repulsor and Watchtower just by dropping, and you will guaranteed have like at least blue for your entire team, as well as amazing weapons. The area is enormous, as well as all of the rotation potential, and even after you drop off of Watchtower, there's a little town underneath it that no one ever lands there either, so you usually get that for free as well. And it's just a ton of loot, and whereas, like I said before, it's not exactly safe, the loot is 10 out of 10, and the rotation potential is also 10 out of 10. Hands down, you definitely get the best loot landing Repulsor. You just need to be careful because it can be very dangerous. You can get rotated on by the people landing water treatment. Usually people, instead of contesting you, will actually go to water treatment instead, and then that way you can get a free rotation towards Watchtower. And sometimes people do land Watchtower, and you could get into some pretty big trouble there if you run into 2 teams or get pinched, and that's unfortunate. But I think overall the rewards greatly outweigh the risks, just because of how amazing the loot actually is. I think when I landed here in the video I'm showing, I think my teammate got like gold armor and a gold knockdown shield, as well as I think I got like a prowler and everything. Like, I was completely set up, and so was my team. We were so ready to win this game. And that's why I think that the loot overall is just so amazing, and definitely the best drop location in this season of Apex Legends. So that's pretty much it for today's video. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.